Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban. Welcome to episode 210 for October 1st, 2014. Today we're talking about lean in the Washington state government. My guests today are Darrell, Damron, and Hollie Jensen. They are both Washington state employees. They serve in the role of enterprise lean consultant within a team called Results Washington. And I've seen them both present their story and their approach earlier this year at a Lean Enterprise Institute Summit. And I'm really happy to have them here to talk about their ongoing improvement story and their approach. So we're going to talk about their different backgrounds and how they got started with lean. Darrell in the public sector, Hollie at Starbucks. We're going to talk about how the state got started with lean, what are some of the goals and accomplishments, how this is a big strategy for Governor Jay Inslee, and why lean was actually a non-partisan issue that was supported by both gubernatorial candidates in the last election. So it's a really interesting discussion, and I hope you enjoy it. And maybe we can help bring lean to more state governments. I certainly hope that's the case here in the state of Texas. So if you want to find links and more notes about this episode, you can go to leanblog.org/210. Thanks for listening. Well, Darrell, hi. First off, thanks for being a guest on the podcast today.
Thank you, Mark. We're excited to be here.
And Hollie, thanks for also being part of the discussion today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mark. I'm happy to be here as well.
Well, I'm really excited to hear about what you're doing within the state of Washington government, but let's kind of go through some introductions first. Darrell, maybe you first, if you can introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about how you first got introduced to lean.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm Darrell Damron. I'm an enterprise lean consultant in the governor's office here in Washington state, and I'm part of a team we call Results Washington. The word consultant's in my title because I do that type of work, but I'm an internal consultant. I've been a public servant here in Washington state government for 23 years now. I've served in a variety of roles over those years. In the Department of Corrections, for example, I worked inside prison as a correctional officer, outside prison as community corrections. Other states call that job like parole officer. Mm-hmm. I was on an interagency SWAT team and with the county sheriff's office and trained at the academy. And I did a startup team that built a new prison from the ground up. Ran a software development project that replaced the corrections legacy computer system. Also ran staff training and development for the Department of Corrections. They have about 10,000 employees. In all those roles, I really looked for ways to make improvements to my own work and the processes I was working in. And in 2008, the director of our Department of Revenue asked me to serve as an internal consultant to her and her executive team, and it was the first time I got to serve as an internal consultant full-time and help people learn about improving without also having program responsibilities or staff that reported directly to me. But for the past 3 years, and under 2 governors now, I've been helping leaders and employees throughout our entire state government learn to use lean principles and tools. In terms of how I got introduced to lean, really before I joined state government, I served 6 years on active duty in the Marine Corps, and I think I got my first exposure to lean principles in the Corps without really knowing it. Everything we did in the Corps, I remember it was just continuously improving was the basic mindset. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in 1986, I received a commendation from the Inspector General of the Marine Corps for redesigning a warehouse and the flow of how equipment for this special operations unit I was in got stored and issued out. It wasn't that I got special training on how to improve. It was just that that was the mindset and what was expected, and I got recognized for improvements we made to that equipment issue and storage process. But I got my first real introduction to lean principles and performance consulting in the late 90s when I met Gary Rumler and started learning from him at his workshops and conferences and talking to him as much as I could. And I've been self-studying and practicing using lean principles and tools in all the jobs I've had really over the past 15 years or so here in our state government. But I have to say that I learned the most about lean over the past 3 years from the nearly 200 private sector lean experts that we've partnered with to help us on our lean transformation journey. And I can explain more about the partnership if you want, but it was actually through that partnership that I first met Hollie at Starbucks.
Yeah, so let's come back and talk about some of that partnership with private sector. But maybe here's a good transition, Hollie, to talk about your background in your career and how you got involved in Lean.
Great, thank you. So I'm an enterprise Lean consultant as well, so similar title to Darrell, and we really see ourselves more as a coach internally versus so much as of a consultant. And what I have responsibility for the state is really a fellowship program within our office as well as some leadership capacity. But leading up to that point, I had a significant amount of time working for Starbucks. Started as a barista in the 90s and worked my way up to my final position there was a Lean practice strategy manager. And my roles range from HR to global strategy. And really in the last 6.5, 7 years of my time there, I was operationally focused, and we built a Lean team in that organization from the ground up, and I was part of that inaugural team. And our focus was really on, through all the time in my career at Starbucks and then in those last 6 to 7 years, was really focused on problem solving. I had a unique opportunity in many of my roles to be in a position where problem solving was the main focus of my job, as well as coaching others and bringing others along in that journey. So that specifically represents some of my time. The highlights really for the last couple of years that I was working at Starbucks, where we really started to ignite kind of the mission we were under. 2008, 2009 economic challenges that the organization was facing as well as the rest of the world. We really had an opportunity to accelerate our work and start to really get the Lean thinking principles and tools out there to the front line, to those that you interact with every day when you're talking to your barista at your local Starbucks, and really build some capability. We had the privilege to develop some standard work, stabilize some systems, and through doing that, really build capability in all levels of the organization through some routines is what related to how to build beverages, how to manage cash, how to put pastry cases together, things like that. And then I also had the unique pleasure while I was there to open a Lean lab. So at the corporate headquarters in Soto area of Seattle, they have a Lean lab where we did a lot of our experimentation. Everything in that lab's on wheels, and the pipes and plumbing come from the ceiling, so we have a lot of flexibility. We brought local baristas in there on a weekly basis to work with them and really think together about how we could get capability built and improve things. And my final kind of work as I was leaving the organization was on focus on the system of work, this basic playbook system of work for stores, to really get them understanding how those simple standard things they were doing really were a part of a broader system. And at the same time, we built a coaching infrastructure to support our leaders as they were really learning how to apply Lean to their work. And that was a pretty exciting time for me and really led me into the role and the work that I'm doing today.
Yeah, and I guess it just goes to show how flexible Lean mindsets and Lean practices are to use Lean in so many different settings. There's a ton of questions I'd love to ask about Starbucks, but we're here to talk about Washington state government. So let's, also an interesting, maybe surprising place to think about applying Lean principles. So maybe Darrell, you can touch on this. Tell us about some of the history of how Lean first got introduced into the state government there in Washington.
Sure. Yeah, well, we really have a long history of trying various approaches to improvement in our state government. Just in my 23 years of service, I've seen 5 different governors in office, and each of them has been focused on this in some way, like issuing an executive order related to quality or improvement efforts. We've seen things like TQM and the balanced scorecard, quality circles. We've had our state agencies using the Baldrige criteria to self-assess every 3 years or so since about 1994. But in 2011, our previous governor issued an executive order calling for our state to use Lean as a strategy for improving our entire enterprise of state government. But since we were headed into an election cycle at that time, instead of focusing on leaders, because many of them would be likely gone after the election, we decided to focus mainly on helping the ground level employees experience how Lean principles and tools could help them fix things that were bothering them for years on the job. So in 2011, we asked the governor's executive cabinet agencies at the time to identify a business problem they wanted to solve. We told them, don't pick world peace or your worst problem ever, and don't pick sharpening pencils or something that nobody cares about, but something in between. And then we asked them to identify 72 people that we could train to understand lean basics, and then we taught them to facilitate value stream mapping. And we gave them basically 9 days of training over a 3-month period. And those lean practitioners then worked in pairs to facilitate their first value stream mapping projects back in their agencies. And so they did 36, VSM projects throughout our state government. It was at the same time that we started asking for help from lean experts in the private sector, and we were able to match up about 30 of those first lean practitioners doing their initial VSM projects with lean experts from the private sector who provided them coaching and helped them along as they started to figure this out. So under Governor Inslee's leadership, and he's been our governor now since 2013, we've really expanded and accelerated our lean transformation journey. So to date, we've received advice, training, coaching, or tours from nearly 200 lean experts from about 90 different organizations, and thousands of state employees have been able to learn about lean from our private sector partners. And these partnerships are no cost, no contract. It's pro bono. People giving back to us in the spirit of helping their state government, move forward on this lean journey. About half of them, the partners, are private sector businesses here in Washington, and a few in other states. But the other half are vendors who, do consulting as their business. So basically, for years now, we've had pockets of throughout the state government of quality improvement and a little bit of lean tools, but our lean journey as an enterprise really began in 2011 with leadership from the governor, and then it's just taken off and expanded and accelerated under Governor Inslee's leadership to 2013.
Yeah, and not to talk about the election too much, but I do remember seeing in the news, and I blogged about this a little bit, it seemed like the political debate in that campaign was not about whether the state should use lean or not, but it seemed like both candidates were in favor of it and were sort of trying to say, well, no, I'm more supportive of lean. I mean, is that kind of a fair assessment of it from the outside, that this was a nonpartisan issue?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the fact that during our last governor election, like you said, both the Republican and Democratic candidates talked at length about their commitment to using lean as a strategy for delivering value to Washingtonians. I think that's evidence that both parties recognize the lean principles and tools can help deliver value. What we're trying to create here, though, is a way of working that can serve as a catalyst for delivering value to Washingtonians, even when the needs and wants of Washingtonians change, and when the people elect a new governor, or when our leaders move from one agency to another. We see what we're creating as a catalyst or a way of working that can hit the targets that are important to Washingtonians, no matter who's in office or who the leaders are at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would add to that one thing that's great about Governor Inslee is he's passionate about using lean management, and specifically from his time in Congress, he experienced what could happen in an organization that was using lean management to run the organization, both at Boeing and Genie Industries and Virginia Mason. He really had the opportunity to see it in action, and that really, he's really behind us 100%, which I think is unique and fantastic part of how we're getting that acceleration going. I think he believes in it. You can tell by the way he talks about it, the questions he asks. And you often hear him saying things like, we can do hard things. So he really knows that this is not easy, but that he's behind us and that he's supportive of us, even to the point where he makes, some surprise visits to agencies and asks about, how are you doing on this? How are you finding success? What are you seeing as challenges? And talk to me about how applying lean principles in your organization is working. So he's really behind it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you see, I wonder, a different style of leadership? Governor is the head of the executive branch of a state, and has a lot of agencies and departments, and in some ways serves as maybe a CEO of all of those organizations. Do you see him behaving in in a style of lean leadership, or how would you? It sounds like showing up and being there at the Gemba, quote unquote, and interacting with people would be one aspect of that, rather than just staying in the Capitol or campaign events all the time, right?
Right. Yeah, and I would say that there's other examples. We have monthly results reviews where the governor's meeting with directors of agencies, and the way he's asking questions, the way he's asking for real transparency and real down and dirty problem solving is evidence to me that he really wants to know what's happening and really wants to to make a real difference in a way that matters to Washingtonians and to those working at the state. I also would cite an example. Just last week, he sent a note out to all of the employees, just thanking them for their dedication to working in this way and thanking them for really the things they're achieving for Washingtonians based on that surprise visit. So he had a real reaction to his visit there and how touched he was by what was happening and how he wanted to share that with the rest of the organization. So I think his connection to employees at all levels, up and down, really shows his style.
Well, that's great. Darrell, maybe if we go back a little bit, talking about some of the origins of lean within state government, what were some of those initial value stream projects or some of those initial problems that people focused on? And were there any sort of key initial success stories that helped draw attention or help build momentum for lean?
Well, I think in one sense, that's a great question. In one sense, all of those initial value stream mapping efforts that we did served the purpose of involving, ground level employees, the folks that were doing the work and the processes. It served the purpose of bringing them together and what they discovered, in mapping out the current state and looking for, opportunities for improvement there. They discovered all those things that happen in a VSM like that, where they're like, I didn't know you did that kind of work, and I didn't know that's what you needed. And so we were bringing together people in process that maybe had never actually come in the same room before, and they were discovering things that were getting them excited about understanding why the process worked the way it did and figuring out what to fix. And yeah, there were a lot of those projects. Actually, all of those projects, I think, contributed to the excitement. There were things like our water rights permitting process, had a year's worth of backlog, and this effort, those initial VSMs, helped them understand how that process worked, and not only get rid of the backlog, but dramatically reduced. And we're talking, it used to be years, and getting it down to months. There was a dramatic reduction in that kind of permitting process. On the other side of the kind of work, we had like our state patrol converts vehicles from, we buy a new car. It doesn't come with, we don't buy it from a factory with all the lights and our computers and, the stickers on the door that say it's a Washington State Trooper. So our state patrol employees convert those cars from factory cars to trooper cars, and they need to do that at a pace that allows them to get those vehicles off the road at the right time, because we sell those vehicles back, and there's a bit of a safety thing there too. You don't want to drive the cars until they're falling apart. But they couldn't keep pace with the demand of the cars needing to come off the road before they did the value stream mapping. And after bringing them together and talking about the process, they found a way to work that process and not only meet demand, but get rid of the backlog they had there as well. A big old parking lot with a bunch of cars, an inventory that needed to be converted. They got rid of that backlog, and actually then were able to get a new vehicle into that process. So it completely changed the type of vehicle, but because they were used to working together now in the way they changed the process, they quickly figured out a new process for the new vehicle and were able to, convert that car in just about a tenth of the time that it took when they, were first looking at this process. So, yeah, the short story is those, helping employees understand how to use the principles and looking at mapping the process out and getting them to work together really started a fire throughout our state government of this being a different thing from the governor's office or from leadership. It wasn't the same old, flavor of the month thing. It was something that actually worked to help employees, change the way things worked on the job, and the employees were excited about it.
Well, yeah, I'm sure people, can get excited about improving, the timeliness, improving flow, improving the way the work is being done. I think, so many people, mistakenly think about the word lean and they associate it with cost cutting, when what I hear you describing is a process of breaking down silos, improving flow, reducing waiting times, improving the responsiveness to people who need services from state government, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and what we experience is the employees, the public servants here in our state government, and it's probably the same, maybe in any organization, and certainly in other public service, other governments across the country. But our employees want to do the right thing. They want to deliver value to Washingtonians, and a lot of them have just been in systems that have beat them up over the years, and they throw their hands up because they feel like they can't win. What lean principles and tools have done for us is give us a structured way to give them the freedom and the opportunity and enough direction to use principles and tools that can be used predictably and repeatably throughout our system, but they're using stuff that actually works, and it's fixing stuff that's important to them in their daily jobs, and they feel better about that, and not only day-to-day coming to work, but also in the idea that they're part of a process that's delivering something important to Washingtonians.
Yeah. Hollie, do you have any sort of favorite examples maybe of some of the work that you've been involved in, coaching people, departments? What kind of success stories would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the uniqueness that I have sitting in the seat that I am sitting in now is that I have this team of fellows that I'm working with that come from state agencies. So this is a team of leaders that have come from other roles in their agency and come work in our office for a 12-month rotational assignment where they're really focused on their development as lean thinkers, as well as the development of goal council directors and their directors, and actually all leadership kind of within the agency's lean thinking. And the unique spot that I sit in where I get to have impact is in coaching and developing them. They're growing, but they're also helping others grow. So we're having the opportunity to do one-on-one kind of problem-solving improvement plan coaching with agency leadership as well as with practitioners across the state. And what we've seen pretty cool things happen where agencies who have maybe never spoken, or even within an agency, groups or departments who do similar type of things, have the opportunity to come together in a way and work on a problem that they've never come together before to work on. So those are the kind of successes I think that Darrell's speaking to that we're really excited about and starting to see real movement on. And yet really some of the results we're aiming for are huge, like increasing graduation rates. That's a big hairy thing to tackle, and you often won't see the results of that in a week's period of time. But the work that we're doing right now to lay the foundation to get us there is exciting, and those are great stretch goals for us to reach towards.
Yeah, and you talk about developing people, and that's such a core theme within lean management. Can you talk a little bit about the Fellows Program? I'm guessing the intent is they spend time in this program, and then they go back into their agencies or departments and are better equipped now to be embedded and lead in a lean way?
Yeah, absolutely. So they come to us for 12 months on loan from their agency, and they get to spend time, working at a leader on a more global level than they might have had the opportunity to do within their agency. And then they work with coaches. I have the opportunity to work as their coach as well as they get some coaching from Darrell. And they also have a Virginia Mason coach that's helping to develop and grow their skills. And while they're focused on their development, they're also bringing others along as part of the application of what they're learning to grow others. And then they return back after 12 months to their agency to share what they've learned, to kind of take that investment that the agency and the organization has made in them back to help that agency kind of grow their own skills and capabilities.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. That there's that investment in people that are still, regardless of the results of any election, they're still going to be working there and working to hopefully continually improve processes and make things better for the state of Washington. Darrell, maybe kind of turning back to you here, you mentioned earlier about the original intent as of lean being a strategy, and I was happy to hear you described the focus on finding problems to solve as opposed to doing, let's say, a statewide 5S initiative or trying to force some sort of tool. And I understand what you're saying, that an election was coming, and so the focus was on frontline staff. Have things become more strategic now with the focus under Governor Inslee in terms of there being high-level goals, or are things still kind of at the point where people are working on things that matter to them locally?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Under Governor Inslee, what we've done is organized 53 of our state agency directors. So these are the folks that run, the governor appoints to run agencies, like Department of Corrections or Social and Health Services, licensing, your typical government agency components. We have 53 of those state agency directors aligned around just 5 goals for our state. And it's goals for our state government to deliver value to Washingtonians. And so, we're not implementing lean in that sense. We're using lean as a strategy that helps us deliver better value to Washingtonians. And so those 5 goals are world-class education, prosperous economy, sustainable energy and a clean environment, healthy and safe communities, and then efficient, effective, and accountable government. So these 53 agency directors are dispersed among these 5 goal areas, and they work as we call them goal councils. They're a council that's paying attention to this stream of value that you're delivering. How do we get to world-class education for folks in Washington State here? And those agency directors are working together and then setting performance measures and targets and metrics. And so at the enterprise level, we have ourselves focused on what value we're trying to deliver to Washingtonians. And we didn't just make those 5 goal areas up. We actually asked Washingtonians, what was important to them, floated these goals and our performance metrics and measures out in various ways, including our, having on our website, literally posted all of it in interactive way for folks to give their comments, right down to the performance metrics that we are paying attention to. So at the enterprise level, we have that sort of strategic galvanized leadership around delivering value to Washingtonians. And then at the same time, we're fostering this development of our employees learning to use lean principles and tools. So each of those 53 agencies have what we call a lean advisor. And so Hollie and I, invest in deepening those lean advisors' understanding of lean principles and tools, and we meet with those folks once a month, and we're using them as a connection between the application, the ground level application of the tools and principles, with the strategic, moves that are being made in these goal councils and at the agencies. Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely, enterprise level leadership stuff going on, tied to ground level. So remember, I mentioned before that we started with the ground level practitioners doing VSM projects involving employees before Governor Inslee came. Now, under Governor Inslee's leadership, we're bringing together those things, the excitement at the ground level that they know these principles and tools work, and the leadership at the executive level that are pointing our improvement efforts toward things that are important to our customers, which we refer to as Washingtonians.
Yeah. And now when you talk about those 5 key areas, do you use the term true north that people would recognize through lean and strategy deployment as a methodology?
We actually don't use that term gets bounced around in some quarters for folks, that have been studying and learning about other people's lean journey. It's not something we publish or, talk about in that way. Mm-hmm. The way we talk about it is just that our state government's in the business of delivering value to Washingtonians. Right. And specifically what that looks like is value in these 5 areas. So everybody get focused, pay attention, figure out how can we, deliver value in these 5 specific areas.
And hopefully that communication of those goals helps create better alignment all the way throughout these different agencies, top to bottom within the state government, in terms of letting people figure out what they should be measuring, what they should be working on to improve and to drive those measures, right?
Yeah, and that's a place where we have, work to do, in terms of, thinking of lean principles and tools in a ocean planning or a catch-ball kind of way. We've got a lot of work to do to really tie the goals that the leadership has set here in terms of targets and where we're headed, tying that by cascading it down through clear to the job level to help every employee understand, what their role is in moving us toward these higher level targets. And we have pockets of catch-ball type activity going on in a really good way. And then we have places where, the connection is not as clear for our employees. So that's that's in our future of things to get better at doing and really make a tight connection there.
Yeah. Hollie, turning back to you, I'm curious. I've never worked in government at any level. I'm curious how you see things, having come from Starbucks in the private sector. Are there particular challenges that you see within state government, or challenges in trying to kind of just to explain lean and to get people excited about lean? What are some of those differences that you saw coming into the public sector?
Yeah, to be honest, there isn't as many differences as people probably think there are. I often get asked that question. But there are a few things that I think stand out to me. One thing is, as you think about state government, there's a significant amount of complexity because we're all in the business of delivering service to Washingtonians. But within our broader sense, our organization, you have, those who are delivering licenses and those who are delivering, food to those who are hungry and those who are actually giving tickets and those who are incarcerating people. So you have this broad, complex kind of beast, whereas in an individual organization, I can boil the customer I can boil our business model down to the $5 that is being paid for the beverage that I am producing, in the case of Starbucks. And so there's certainly that level of complexity that's interesting and unique, given that there's these kind of individual businesses in the broader organization. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is that we, and I don't know if this is unique to government, but I think that it's something that is interesting about our journey, as well as I've seen others on their journey, and that's kind of that VSM focused, project focused, where we kind of started as we had the strategy to get the front lines involved while we were going through this leadership transition, and really shifting the organization from a place that's really tools focused more to a cultural transformation. And we had that same challenge at Starbucks, and the beauty of the tools is that if you have any work to do to kind of get people on board and build some momentum, the tools will get you some quick wins that will show folks, this stuff will work and this is how it'll help you. But if you don't make that shift sometime along the way, you're just going to lose out. Those tools eventually won't get you sustainable results if people aren't actually acting different. And so we've had the unique opportunity through this private sector relationship to learn that. The state has learned that earlier than I've seen some other organizations where that's a big pitfall. But we still are working on that. So shifting really from focusing on tools to focusing on all employees throughout the organization solving problems, and all leaders in the organization coaching. And we're really on our journey to moving in that direction, and that's exciting. I think the thing that's guiding us, which is a great reference and a good partnership we have going with Lean Enterprise Institute. So John Shook and his camp developed the transformational model that they've shared, with the public, and say, noodle on this, see how this thing's working for you guys. And we now have what we call the results model. The results model is based kind of on what Shook designed, but the results model is helping us guide and align our efforts across state government, so we see improvements in all areas of the lean system, from process improvement to mindset and culture to value-driven purpose, not solely focused kind of in the tool area. And so that's really one challenge that we've come up against, and the strategy we're using to help get us further is by using the results model.
Yeah. So maybe as we start to wrap up here, Darrell, let me get some of your thoughts. I mean, what are some of the key challenges for Results Washington, for the state of Washington, in your work and the governor's over the next year or over the next 5 years? What are some of the key focus areas?
Well, I think Hollie certainly mentioned that one of our biggest key ones is converting our mindset to this idea of every leader a coach, every employee a problem solver. It's we have 68,000 employees. For us it feels like a pretty big ship to turn toward that. So the capability building that we're doing there, certainly a challenge. Finding ways to involve Washingtonians in improving our processes, where we're looking at how we deliver service. We're really interested in already practicing literally bringing in Washingtonians from the public into improvement efforts, where we've gathered state employees who are looking at a process, and the Washingtonian from the public is right there in the room with us, giving their voice at that moment where we're considering and showing how this process works and where we think it needs to be improved, and they're contributing right there. One of our challenges is to figure out, how best to involve the myriad and all the different kinds of people that we serve in those improvement efforts. And I think another challenge area for us, I don't know if it's a challenge or opportunity. It's really both, in the sense that there are other states who are interested in what we're doing, and they're also pursuing something similar where they're using lean principles and tools from an enterprise perspective. And we're interested in, just like in the private sector partnership we have, we're learning from folks who've been on the journey ahead of us, and so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, and get advice and help. Mm-hmm. We're interested in reaching out and working with other states across the country who are learning from the lean journey, and I think that's an opportunity and a challenge that's ahead of us as well.
Yeah. Well, and there are other states, thankfully, doing similar types of transformational work. I'll lay out the challenge here for my state of Texas that whoever our next governor is after the upcoming election, I hope the state of Texas does more to follow the example that's being set by Washington and a number of states out there to try to just improve the way state government functions. Our political leaders, I trust, are going to decide what state government should do. But once that decision is made, hopefully everyone can agree in a non-partisan or bipartisan way that that state government can work better. And in our case down here for Texans, so I appreciate the leadership and the example that you all are taking up in the state of Washington. Darrell first, and then Hollie. Do you have any final thoughts that you would want to leave the listeners with today?
Sure. Yeah. I have personally received so much value from our Lean Expert Partnership Program, and our state collectively. The enterprise of state government really has received this boost from the willingness of folks in the private sector who have expertise in lean, being willing to help their state government. And I would encourage your listeners, those who are in the private sector and live in some state, to be willing to consider helping out in some way. I think as this idea of using lean as a strategy for government catches across the state, then there'll be opportunities in your own state, wherever you might live, to help your state government. And of course, if you're in a state that doesn't have anything like this going on right now, I'm happy to bring you into our partnership program. You can help us. We're always willing to take more help. But yeah, I'd encourage folks in the private sector to help government, whether it's state, local, county, or just nonprofits. Lend a hand where you can.
Great. And Hollie, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think my final thought is one of the challenges that I didn't speak to that I think we face is just patience. So there's often a lack of patience for learning while we're experimenting, and we learn best by doing. So I would say get out there, experiment, and do so that you can learn, and give folks space to actually do that. And then it takes time to get the results, and it also takes time to see behavior change. So give yourself that kind of opportunity to see the results in the near term and see the results in the long term that really matter, and just get out there and start doing it.
Well, that's great advice, and I'll post a link. You both mentioned John Shook and LEI and that transformational change model that starts with asking questions like, what problems do we need to solve? How are we going to develop people? I'll post a link to that on the show notes for this episode. So Darrell, Damron, and Hollie Jensen, thank you so much for being guests today here on the podcast.
Thanks for having us. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.